Yo, 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 another episode, another day, another week. How's it been, Errol?
No, it's been going, dudes. We are still alive. Good
Hmm.
sign.
Still alive.
Still
Yeah.
somewhat healthy. I have just
Somewhat
still a
healthy.
cold. Somewhat
Yeah.
healthy, but it's could always be worse, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's going, dude. It's going. Yeah.
Going is going. Yeah, I feel like we both have like the grind ahead of us in different ways, whether it be for you doing Elise and then for me doing Tilden, but it's coming along for both of us, I feel.
It's it's also like, I was talking about this with a few friends the other day too. A lot
Hmm.
of people when I tell them I'm going back to work, or when I'm telling them, oh yeah, I sometimes work over the weekends, it
Yeah.
usually get the same reaction of like, why are you doing that to yourself? Like, you really need to take breaks. You really shouldn't do that. And I always, I'm not sure if we talked about this at all, but I've
Hmm.
always kind of responded by saying it's still the life I chose. Like, it's still what I want. It doesn't really seem like that bad for me. And I, like constantly working, like always like, hustling. It's for a lot of people, they just see it as like that's really unhealthy. But for me, it's like I see the opposite as unhealthy. I see kind of having like a work-life balance. It's just not really for me. But at the same time, like it's not like I'm working 24/7, like I go out every now and then, live life. I'm taking this morning off. But it's just, what I'm trying to say is me and you are just built different, Thomas.
I think we have different opinions on that. I don't think work-life balance, I mean, it's probably different definition for everyone, but I think the
Yeah.
concern is more like you just don't have as much dimension compared to other people if you're doing the same thing over and over again. But that's fine if you want to be like, in a sense, I would probably categorize that as obsessed, but it's a good obsessed because I probably would say, 9 out of 10 times of my week, I am also working on my startup. So I understand the grind. I just think there is a line between what would be considered, oh, like I'm definitely working on this and I'm obsessed versus I have to like bring in other inspirations in order to like raise the bar. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? Yeah.
No, that's it's different for everybody, and that's why it's like I've when people always like, oh, you do this too much, you do that. It's like, well, for you, yeah, it's probably too much, but for me, it's not, and it's just
Yeah.
for me and my life, like it's I don't know, like I really just like to work hard, and I like to work a lot, and that's why it's just like I have some life balance as well. Like I'm we're doing this podcast right now. Like I'm doing things that aren't
Right.
completely related to, which I don't know if you would count this as work. I have no idea. I don't think so.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just different for everybody. And some people just don't want to work at all. Some people just want to, go in, go out as soon as possible. And I understand that. That was me at my last job. But it's
Yeah.
just
I think the difference here is just maybe again, like not our upbringing, but maybe the roles that we have been placed or we have chosen for ourselves. Where, I
yeah.
mean, from a long time ago, right? I think there is obviously a very clear lineage of like why you would want to work hard on things. This is like the skill I feel like you have grown over time. And it's not like something that you would just like throw away because it's a skill that you want to have and you know that it's like honestly a skill that other people don't have, right? To focus on one thing and then obsess of it over it in a sense is actually a really good trait for a software engineer because
Yeah.
like if a problem exists, you want to know how to solve it, you want to get every which way, and then you want to like figure out every little tiny detail, right? But the design stuff that I've been thrown into is more like you need to get constant feed of inspiration from multiple sources in order to
Yeah.
really dictate like what your worth is, right? So it's not as like easy as like going to, I would say, I wouldn't say it's categorized as this, but it's not as easy as like going to Stack Overflow. Like your inspirations are not as clear cut as it might be in certain aspects of computer programming. And I would still say that I'm probably more of a designer than a coder, but I'm not going to say I'm not a coder, right? Like I wouldn't say I'm not a coder, but I would just say that like in general, it definitely like I start more with a design thinking sort of process, and that basically necessitates you needing to have multiple streams of inspiration and inspiration, right? Information and inspiration to then dictate what you do in the work. So doing this podcast is like a creative endeavor, but it's also chatting with you, and there's a lot of other things, right? That would bleed in like other very non-tangible ways to my life, right? That's how I look at this.
Oh yeah, I definitely see that. And we've talked about this like I remember years ago too when we were doing Coop Site. And I mean, would you say that this is related to our talk we had back then where we said I think it was actually you and George who said it's okay to run more than one startup at the same time because you can get a lot of inspiration from working at a different one.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence on that one. I think there is because unlike you guys, not a shit on you guys because I feel like I've gone through this rut this whole time, right? So just a lineage of like what I've been doing. We did Coop Site together. Correspondingly, I always had like another project that's like doubled up on that. So in this case, I had robotics at NYU Shanghai, right? Then once we like finished and we're doing Coop Site fully, that kind of like ended at the school year, right? So then we continued, and then I was like, okay, I don't really know what to do with my life. So then I went and did fights with you guys, but then that was actually the start of me doing Tilden most more of the time. So like fives was just kind of like side to that, right? And then from there, fives didn't really work out. So then I was like, I don't really know if like it's smart to. Well, we all agreed to disband that, but then we kind of had like our own directions, and then from there I worked on Tilden, and then I also started to work on something with another friend that's called Metaphor, right? So like all of these things have been pretty much guiding me to like I've at least had in most of my time two things happen at the same time. um but I don't really know if like the original hypothesis where being part of like more than one collective will give you more like not only chances but other like perspectives. I feel like it might be true, but that's only assuming that both endeavors are like equally as important, and they're both equally like moving in a very good sense, right? If one is lagging and the other one is accelerating, like you kind of feel bad every day. You don't feel like an increase of like, oh, I've invested my time wisely. Whereas if you're just in one, right, then if it goes up, you go up. If it goes down, you go down, but like you're kind of more singularly focused. So um I think what I'm trying to describe is like more of a different thing. It's not necessarily just like work, right? Because I still see these like if I'm working on two things, it's still work, right? Maybe work in a different like capacity or different like mindsets, but it's still work. I'm thinking more like not necessarily the fun things as in like, oh, just a podcast or whatever, but I'm thinking of more like, oh, having time to read or going out with friends or whatever. Like that would weirdly enough be a good breath of fresh air. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Like they're kind of like it's kind of like that scene in Men in Black 3 where they're like, oh, let's go like eat some pie because we don't know like what to do with our situation right now. And then we go and eat pie, we have a breather, and then usually it kind of solves itself out because at least we have a new perspective. So it's like the same thing here.
But I've always thought that was more like taking a break. Taking a break and then getting different inspiration from different places, I think is two different things. Like I'm okay with taking a break and eating pie. And actually, now that you said that, I kind of want to get some pie, but um
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've had pie too.
same
But
here.
I've like I mean you said it too, you're like, does it increase your chances of success if you're working on more than one startup? And I've always felt like you have to be obsessed over one entity to really make it successful. That's also why I think I'm having problems like right now doing anything away from Elise. Is because I don't think I'm just really wired that way. I'm wired to just really focus on one thing and really go all in for it. And
Yeah,
sure, like we were running Coop site while we were in school and I was, doing my double major, but I really didn't see like that was kind of like work, like school wise. I always felt like, yeah, it was kind of not a breeze, but it wasn't really like I was just so accustomed to it. I think it was okay for me. But like right now, like I think I'm gonna have a lot of problems going forward if I want to start anything else on the side, have any other inspiration. It's just I don't know. Like, I'm just not built like that, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think obviously do what works for you. I think my upbringing might be at play at this that my family is always well, it started from very humble beginnings. My dad, right? Like you live in New York City right now. It's like 1960s Chinatown where like you're talking about, oh, you're like your sink is sorry, your shower is clogged or whatever. His ceiling is leaking and there's like cockroaches everywhere, right? So like my dad has kind of trained me and my sister that like you always need to have a contingency plan, even if you want to obsess over like the first and foremost thing, right? Like it's always good to be prepared in the event of worst case. Now there is a line for that, right? There is always a line for that, but he's been very hyper focused on that. I think there's a good thing to be said to that. It's like pretty much like an investor, like always hedge your risks. Don't let like infinite risks run wild. So like I guess the risk here would be like if God forbid, I'm not like wishing this, if Elise doesn't do well, right? Like, do
Oh,
you have a contingency? That's kind of like where maybe that would blend into it. I think it's a different topic than what you're discussing right now, which is like, okay, I'm like focused on at least the work there. And I could probably hear the Erol in me saying, well, it doesn't really matter because I'm gaining the skills to then get my next job, whatever, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if Elise goes under. Okay, I gotta stop saying that because I don't want to wish that upon you, man.
uh,
But like it's just for me, it's like it's like you gotta start an investment before you see the fruits of your labor, right? So if you do this where you're investing so much time in this endeavor and you're not preparing for the next, or you're not like simultaneously seeing how that progresses, then you're kind of stuck in a standstill by where when you need it, it needs to basically like be done, right? So it's not like you don't grow a tree right immediately when you're hungry. You grow a tree to then get the fruit when you're hungry. You get what I'm saying? It's like preparedness. So it's kind of like the same mindset there. I think there's other tangential things that like give that benefit of doing multiple things at once, but certainly like focus is something that you have to just be very strict upon. And then second of all, it's I don't know. I look at it as like being able to manage several things at once. Um, it's not great to do multitasking, but it's good to like think about that is generally where you want to like gain a skill. That's how I look at it. I look at it as you need to gain a skill in doing multiple things at once because look at like all the greatest leaders in the world and probably all these quote unquote role models, regardless of their like personal attitudes and behaviors or whatever. I just feel like the ability to do multiple things at once, right, is kind of a very hallmark skill of a great leader that looks at a lot of different things at once. They can't just like tunnel vision to one thing. They actually would get people to tunnel vision while they broaden it out and try to get as much done.
yeah. I think the biggest change recently has just been Elon Musk, right? Because I think he was the first person to really be super, super, super successful, but in a multiple different branches. He has SpaceX, he has Tesla, he has Solar City, he has Twitter now, and he's doing all of these like massive things and they're all like relatively successful thus far. And that's why, like,
Yeah.
it's I think the philosophy is changing from you have to be fully obsessive to, oh, it's okay to branch out a little bit. It's okay to diversify. But it's I don't know which book I read this in. It might have been the Lean Startup, but um it was this philosophy of don't have any backup plans ever. If you want to work at a startup, you have to, I think it's like burn the ships, which is like this like ancient thing where it's like, I think just like one country, I think Greece was like invading Turkey. And then as soon as they landed on the coast, the one general was like, yeah, burn all the ships. And the reason for that is like, yeah, if we don't win, we're all fucked. So you better fucking win. That was the philosophy. And that's something that has been spoken in a few startups where it's like you have to make this work because you have no choice. And I've like I said, I've heard that a lot. I haven't been in that position yet because at the end of the day, like, the Coop set of fives, if nothing worked out, I can always just go back to it. But it's something that I think I still believe in. I feel like if you have absolutely no choice but to make this successful, you will have to do. That is the highest chance of you actually making it successful in the end. It's a huge risk, but I think that's the only way you can like really, really, really make something huge.
I think there is like, benefits to that. I mean, in my current life, I am having kind of not, I wouldn't say the same sort of thing, but to me, it's a balance. People recommend that because usually it requires discipline to really focus on a startup and try to fix it or try to do things in a time span that is supposed to be short. If you don't have a sense of mortality, then the meaning of a startup is perpetual. It's just not, you can say, oh, I'm a startup entrepreneur for like 5-10 years and you don't make
Yeah.
anything of yourself, right? Whereas if you do burn the ships, in this sense, it might be like you only focus on this or whatever, it has to succeed. But I would kind of step back and say that it's kind of interesting how we're going full circle in this conversation. I think that if you do too many things at once, then yes,
Mm.
you're like so unfocused that nothing matters. Where, for example, let's say I like to play music, I like to go outside and like I don't know, drink coffee or whatever, and then I'm working on
On the
like
outside.
3, 5 startups or whatever, right? Like the reality is if you're doing all of that and you're not like focused on one thing, then you're generally going to get less and less done, which I think we talk about Elon Musk. I feel like he's like already hit his limit quite away, right? Like just doing two was pretty much good, and that's when he was like the poster child. Now I feel like the empire is kind of crumbling a little bit because there's just so much stuff on his plate, right? Like that's the reality. Like, you just can't do like everything and just keep maximizing over and over again. Um, I think there's a limit, right? So with that being said, like I think that sense of mortality needs to be there. You should generally have one singular goal that like you are aiming to pursue. If this does not do well, then you're fucked, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't side tangents that might even coincide with that main goal or things that are investing in the next goal after this one because it's pushing you to want to go and succeed not only this goal but to like prepare for the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like for example, like right now in my life, I should definitely do more things than just work at a singular job.
Right. Because even
I
though
think
you're
that's like the
gaining all
biggest
the
one.
skills here, right? Like an example would be to do hobby projects, right? I know you probably don't have as much time, but it's like see what you can do because you always want to keep not only your skills sharp, but you want to keep like that prospect of like what I can do in the future always open. There's probably going to be like realistically future opportunities that would necessitate you knowing things past Elise AI, right? Like
Yeah,
maybe a
oh, of
future
course.
job or maybe a future opportunity or something like that. And so not being as prepared as you can be is just a disservice to your future self, right?
Yes. And something I have actually been thinking about. I'll give you a little I mean like we're recording this, but I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking about doing is I am thinking about having this working at least, but also something I was like really considering and something I just enjoyed in college was working with more like interactive media in terms of like
Hmm.
VR, AR. That was somewhat interesting to me. So I'm thinking about honestly like reaching out to my professor who did that, who taught
Yeah.
those classes, and be like, hey, like, do you have like any side projects you need help with or so forth? I think
Hmm.
that's something that I'm definitely very open with, but it's still all like work related, but it's a way as to kind of sharpen my skills, even though it's
Yeah.
not something that I'm probably gonna apply. Like there's not much between VR and like hard code, CRM coding stuff. Like there's not much overlap, but I feel like it's definitely something just having this more diversity is definitely a big plus, and I really should be doing it. As well as just like not work related things. Like, I really do need to find a hobby. So it's a little sad I don't really have any.
I mean, I look at again, even some of these like legendary programming people. I was just searching up his name just to confirm I'm getting it correct. Like, do you know of John Carmack?
John Carmack, that name sounds familiar.
He's the guy who, like, in the 1990s, if you will, like made the game Wolfenstein, Doom, and like a lot of other really famous video games. Kind of like pretty much jump started the whole like 3D graphics era of video games, right? And right now he's kind of like more of a focusing on artificial intelligence, right? But I'm just like anyone that knows about him like knows that he's very much a very genius programmer, right? Like definitely up there in terms of like really legendary programmers that have like paved the way for a lot of different things. So what I find interesting is that guy is even though he's been coding like for a long time, and even though he probably could just keep on doing video games, he chose to like move away from video games more to like artificial intelligence. By the way, he also did Oculus. Like he was their
Yeah,
CTO.
yeah.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of different things that like you might say about this guy, but I just feel like that's a very indicative thing where you kind of start somewhere and then you end somewhere completely different. And that's generally a good thing because if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you're not really advancing. That's how I look at it, right?
Oh yeah. And like I've always said since like day one, like out of college even, like when people ask me, what are you gonna do in like a year? What are you gonna be in like 5 years? I will just be like, I don't fucking know. I could be dead. I could have like a canoe shop. I could be, programming away. Like I have no
Yeah.
idea where I'll be. It's just because I mean, like at the end of the day, like that's life. Like I understand, like even right now, I'm not thinking in like the 5, 10, 20 year horizon. I'm thinking right now, like the 1 or 2 year horizon. Because that's something that I think I can definitely control for now. It's
So
something that is
yeah. I
just
think
because you
I think there's an enjoyment to that. I mean, when I first met you, we were very like I felt like we were very much oil and water, right? Like where you're probably like if we had to categorize, you probably would be water, formless, and I'm like oil, which is like sticking to anything. So the thing here is like the people ask that sort of question, and I just kind of like feel, or rather, I think the question underlying that is like, what do you want to be doing in 5 years? Like, it's not just where do you see yourself, it's like what sort of actualization plan are you moving towards to get to that like 5 year mark? Like you have to mentally picture that. That's what like most people try to ask. There's also something you can say where it's just like, I don't really care about the 5 years. Like, I just want to see how to be improving today or tomorrow, right? I get that whole point. But it usually, again, comes down to they probably see you, Erol, as like someone that's very like aspirational or someone that is working hard. So it's like, okay, what's guiding you not just to work hard right now, but like someone that would work hard generally would probably want to get somewhere very high in the future, right?
oh yeah, like I want to be like the reason I work so hard, the reason why I do what I do is because it's largely just because like I'm very ambitious. Like I don't want like a very simple life. I want a very
Right.
complex, like that's my style. And once again, if somebody else doesn't want that type of lifestyle, that's 100% okay, but it's not what I want. And I'm moving towards that in the long run, sure, but I don't really know what that's gonna mean. I'm still
I
just thinking very quick, you know?
I think you'll probably get there. Um, I don't think that your approach is wrong by any means, but I think people, maybe me included, would just kind of assume that if you have the ability to really visualize that, because you have these other traits that would make you very much, go ahead and like work hard and do all of these things. Um, there's nothing more powerful than someone that says, I will do this in the next 5 years, and then they do it, right? Like, because they have such a clear picture of doing it, right? If Michael Phelps says, okay, next Olympics, I'm going to win, like, obviously, it's like, okay, you already won like how many times? Like, it's of course, right? But he already has an actualization plan. He already sees in the next 4 years, I'm going to train XYZ. I'm going to do this every single day, or I'm going to do whatever. And I'm going to achieve this goal that I have set out for myself, that I have publicly said. That is something that like has its own weight and meaning for not just leadership, but also like how you carry yourself, right?
Yeah, it's we talked about that last time too about how Michael Phelps, like I guess he sees himself winning every night before he goes to sleep.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking about that a lot more. It's like, I mean, I don't know where I'm gonna be. Like, I don't know. Like life is just so wild right now. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to take it a step at a time.
I
And
think that
right now it's just,
visualization is just clear once you have that goal in mind, Errol. Like you like
yeah, but
truthfully,
I
not a
I
shit
I
on you.
don't.
You probably can't like dream as clear as he has because the dream that you have is still hazy, right? Like certainly even for me, it's hazier than Michael Phelps. He knows what his game includes, right? It's like I
Yeah,
know where the line is, I know what I need to do to achieve whatever, right? For him, it's a closed system. For us, it's more an open
yeah,
system because there's so much more possibility. um because we're like in a
yeah.
different field and we have, we're younger and all this sort of stuff. But I think figuring out that clarity of like what you aim to achieve, whether it be something external or something internal, is a very like powerful process, right? Because
Hmm.
to me, impact is like the main reason why I was put on this earth. Like people ask like what's your purpose in life? um I could say there's a lot of philosophies on this, religion included, right? But I think that at the end of the day, why do you even want to do a startup? For me, I like to do startups because I feel like at the end of the day, I want to make products that make people happy and make it useful for people so that my impact in the world is net positive, not net negative, right? So
Yeah,
if right.
that's
So if that's the case, if I'm so gung-ho about this, and I'm not gonna like, I'm not saying that anyone that's not in a startup is not doing that, right? I just feel like you have more freedom to choose on what you want to do there. But if that's the case, then there's definitely a life, like there's only a window, a certain window of opportunity to really get this dream out, right? I can't just say, oh, I'm gonna do that in like 50 years time. I probably could, but like the degree of which I would plan for things is going to be less urgent. So I would probably say I have to do that really quickly, right? So you don't need a 5-year plan, but I think a big goal for like the next whatever, your next milestone needs to be clear.
Mhm. That's a good point. I think it's I think it is definitely very important, but it's also, I don't know, there's something nice and very, I mean, you said too, it's very free. The fact that we don't have like any like 5-year like goals and we're still trying to figure that out. I if I want to like have like a 5-year goal that I really want to work towards, I think I can get it done. But it's something that I really just need to be fully like passionate about. Like I really like I want to do this because I really enjoy doing it. And that's something that I absolutely like, I just don't have right now. I didn't really have with
Well,
Coops. I
yeah.
didn't really have, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Is like I want to find a goal that I know I can achieve just because I genuinely want it.
Mhm. I think that it's best summarized with like that quote from Eisenhower. I'm not sure if I'm going to paraphrase it. It's like plans don't matter, but planning matters. Does it make sense? So like saying, oh, I'm gonna hit this milestone in the future, like you might not know exactly when, but to know that you actually at least made a goal and you're planning for something is like a good mental thing to do, such that like you pretty much come down to Boolean values with this, right? Basically, it's a yes or no on whether or not you're achieving your goal or not. Whereas if you leave it open, you're like, okay, anything goes, my goal could be anything. I don't even have it set. Then it's basically continuous. It's not a Boolean value. It's not discrete. It's not something that's yes or no.
Yeah,
It's just not even there. It could be there and
right.
it's not there. It's in a state of superposition, right?
I will say though, it's something that is like it has to be specific too, right? It
Yeah,
has to be like I want to achieve this. And that's why like the whole startup mentality is like I want to like change the world. I want to like inspire people. I want
right.
to make some value in life. I've always felt like that's nice, but I need to be
Yeah, it's
more
too
specific.
general. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
I
needs to
have to
be
figure that out.
smart, right? Like you're aware of like SMART goals, right? Like the
Smart goals. I know of smarts. I know of goals. And I know people put a lot of smarts behind things these days, but I don't know what smart goals
no, there's like an acronym for certain like good goals to make.
are.
And the acronym is SMART. So the acronym for SMART is specific, measurable, actionable, uh
Attainable.
retain yeah, attainable, sorry, not actionable, attainable. What is the R? Oh man, I know
Relevant.
T is time sensitive, but I don't remember what the R is. I think
Specific,
it's
measurable, livable, relevant, and time
relevant.
bound.
Yeah. Yes. So the like I feel like if you can make a goal that it is a smart goal, that would probably be fine. What I was describing as like the whole reason why I'm here, that's more of a general life legacy sort of thing. I wouldn't say that's a goal, right? That's just like a state of being, right? um but a smart goal would be probably like in the next 3 months, I'm going to release something that is much better for Tilden, such that it makes people that are doing traveling much like what it makes their lives easier, right? Faster, better, easier, whatever.
But
So
is that specific?
I can go more specific, obviously, right? But I'm just trying to say, like, it's in relation to like, oh, I just want to make an impact that's net positive. Like, what do you mean by net positive, right? Like, I can be more specific, more specific, more specific. But I think
Yeah,
you can definitely make on like a piece of paper your specific types of things for your SMART goals, and you can take these and break them down even further. But it's good to do that every now and then, right? I do that usually after like a big momentous thing has happened in my life. So I certainly did like SMART goals at the end of when we were like, okay, Coupe it's not working out, let's do something else. I definitely did it at the end of fives. Usually it's like not at the cusp of failure as well. It's also like when I finish something, right? It's like, okay, I need to reset. I need to see what is the next priorities, right? And
yeah,
have them written down.
I see that. It's smart goals definitely can be very useful. I can see it.
Mhm.
Except, hmm, I don't know, like having just like some goals in life is great, but I've also felt like a lot of the goals I have had, I guess this kind of goes back to what your quote was about, where it's like a lot of the goals I've had kind of like shot the bed a little bit. Like
Mhm.
it's not like something like bad happened, but it's like it was just like too much went on to the point where I can no longer achieve this goal or I don't want to anymore. And it's always like very like malleable for me. Like, for example, like one small goal I had in college was I'm gonna reach 2000 FIDE rating in chess.
Uh-huh.
I legit did not have time to study. So unfortunately, I did not get to that goal. And it's something that is like, it's okay that I didn't achieve it. It's okay. I wrote it down. I tried to a little bit, but I think that's my issue with goals is like a lot of the times my life just changes because I think of this like kind of short-term horizons that it's not, I won't say relevant, but it's just something that's very difficult for me to predict.
Well,
And it's for me,
I would say again, smart goals or even goals for that matter have to follow that sense of relevancy. I think
yeah,
that in college, obviously your two main priorities, at least from my perspective, was, alongside me and George to make Site successful and then to get good grades, right? Right? Like very simple. Um, so obviously those are higher goals than getting a higher chess rating. Not to say it's like something that's worthless, but like
what degree
those
in
are more
Thomas?
those are more important, right? And I would say that like if we realistically looked at Kupse, we probably would have like somebody would probably have to say, okay, we're going to make this success in 3 months, otherwise we're not doing it, right? We never really set a time bound for what we would like really realistically get to success. And after 2 years of, I would say mid, very interesting story, but like just kind of like stagnant growth, right? Like we weren't reaching our goal there, and we didn't even have the measurable tools to really say that was the case. So I would
Yeah.
say don't make goals out of everything. You need to make goals on the things that matter. The things that you're like, you only make one or two. That's what I'm learning, right? If you make everything a goal, then nothing is a goal, really. It's because it's just all like bullshit, right? Um, so like you only make one or two goals that you're going to gun for because they have to be not only relevant, they have to be your top priority, and you have to like constantly be measuring it. Measuring it in itself takes a lot of time. Um, and I think that if you're like not really in the mood to focus on it, then it just won't even happen, right? so so goals have to be really relevant. If they're not relevant at all, then you're just not going to do them, right? There was a
Well,
time in my
speaking of,
life where I was like, "Oh, I'm going to learn all this coding," and
yeah,
like the only thing that really actualized me to really code is like me having to do it like for a thing, right? It's not to learn and do all these courses. I'm not gonna like I bore out really quickly, right? Thai is really a good example. Like I am learning Thai. I take classes all the time. For the longest time, for maybe like 6 months, I'm struggling. I'm like, oh man, I don't even know how to speak Thai. I've been doing this for 6 months. All of a sudden, I have a friend, like one of my dad's friends, but then he's Thai, right? And so we practice speaking now, right? And I'm like, oh shit, like I gotta know my vocab. So it's like for a reason. And now I can feel like, oh, my Thai is getting better because I'm practicing with someone, right? If you don't have a reason to do it, then you won't do it. Like if there's no reward at the end of the day of getting this chess rating, like if the chess rating in itself is the reward, then you'll be like, okay, that can be like 50 years from now. Like it doesn't really matter. Whereas Coop say you gotta like succeed in like next 3 months because we have a next bigger goal to achieve after that, right? Like, but but not having that sense of urgency kind of crumbles everything.
I see that. Something I did have when I was younger that is very interesting that I look back to every now and then is my goal in life when I was like in high school or middle school was I'm gonna be president. I don't
Okay.
know why, but it was something that I felt where I think it was like I wanted to make like I if I wanted to have any goals, I wanted to have it be the highest goal possible because a lot of the goals I have, I usually fall short of. So if I set an exceptionally high goal, my philosophy I think was I'm gonna reach something big. And so that's why like I was always like I'm gonna be president. So I'm gonna work and I'm gonna live my life as if that's my goal. That's how it was when I was younger. And like I would say like probably like the first year of college too. That's it's a little fucking weird, but that's how it was for me because I'm just not good with goals, I guess. And right now in my life, I don't think I want to be president. That's not on my agenda.
Goals change
But
though, Errol. It's fine.
exactly,
Yeah. But like in this case, again, it breaks down like it's not a SMART goal because you missed the
that's
A, the
absolutely not.
achievable part,
No,
right? You would have to wait
it's
40 years before
well,
that like goal really actualizes. And realistically, the way you would do that is you break down this giant SMART goal of becoming president into much smaller things. Probably be like, oh, become a congressman. Okay, in order to become a congressman, you have to go to a good school. In order to do like, you know what I mean? Like you can keep breaking it down to your next step. It's you still need
yes,
foundational fundamental truths to guide you to that larger goal,
yes.
assuming it's
So
important.
originally it was too large, and now it's too small. I need
Yeah.
to find a nice.
Correct.
I gotta look at this. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's I don't know. That
Yeah.
would be nice though. If I
I think
actually had better
it's
goals.
I think it's something that you and I are not like perfect at. I think most young people our age are not like 100% on this either. I mean, there are a lot of exceptions to the rule. All these like famous people that have achieved already so much at like our age. I feel like it's because they had a better um clearer picture of what their goals are and how to achieve them, right? That's really all it comes down to. Like that's the difference in, I guess, philosophy of people that are quote unquote more successful than us that are the same age or younger than us. It's because they had a clearer
Yeah,
goal that they went in and achieved, right?
that's true. But I've also I'm not like a massive fan of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he says something that's like really like he touches up on how he didn't get into his current business, the whole media marketing business, until he was like in his like mid 30s. And he's
Okay.
always saying how when you're in your 20s, it's your time not to really like figure out the world. Your job is really just to go out, experiment, see what you really like and what you want to do with your life. And even in your 30s, you can do that, even in your 40s. And that's something that's very true. Like that's why I'm not like really pressured to like I need to know what I want to do for the rest of my life tomorrow. Like I'm not pressured with that at all. I know right now, and this is what I tell people too, like even my brother. It's like I don't know what I'm gonna love doing in a few years, but I'll tell you this: right now, I would not have this any other way. I like the fact that I'm working. I like my job. I like that. I love how I'm in actually New York City. It's right now is what I enjoy doing. I don't know where I'm gonna be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but let's focus now. That's TLDR because we're running a long time here. That's always been my philosophy: is I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen in 2+ years. Let's focus on now.
I think
But I will,
that's fine, dude. That's fine. I
yes,
still go back to you got to be fluid like water, right? It's the planning that's
exactly.
important, but not the plan. You don't stick to the plan saying, "Oh, I want to be president." If it's like you have newer goals because you're going to live more and you're going to realize new things, right?
Yeah,
So, but not
be
planning is also bad. So you got to find that fine balance of like not over planning, not under planning, just planning just enough.
yes. I will tell you though, I have one goal in like the next like 2 3 years,
Mm,
and that goal is I want to buy an apartment in Manhattan. That
okay.
is an exceptionally ambitious goal, but you know what? We're gonna. I think it is definitely attainable.
That
I
sounds
think it's
good,
possible.
man. Yeah.
That is
And then
that is my only goal, dude. Like,
yeah.
I would love
And then
that.
I'll see Errol's, apartment with my own two eyes, and I'll be like, ah, so this is where Errol sleeps. And
This is
then
yes,
I'll look at
that
your
is so
shower
true
and try to
statement.
see if there's any like hair in your drain or whatever.
It's so fucking bad him, and then
That was such a
like
weird comment.
I promise like I'm not like shedding my hair or anything. Like I talked to my barber about that. It's just that this fucking drain is just so dog shit. It's so
Mm.
annoying, man. It's
If you were
yeah.
doing it the Chinese way, you would buy one of those like whatever things that like collect and you pull it out and then
Uh,
yank it out. Yeah.
uh, no, I prefer my old apartment where I literally just didn't have a drain and it was just a hole and I would just take a shower and never clog ever. I love that.
Uh-huh.
That was a great time.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, Thomas, we're running low here.
Yep.
This has been a good talk about
Yep.
goals, life, planning, all that
Yep.
fun jazz.
Yes.
And I guess until next week, sir.
Yep. All right. See you, man. Have a nice week.
Goodbye.
Bye.